come into contact with them if you could help it. So they would actually put their wine through strainers to keep the gnats out. So he's saying, you'll do that, but then at the same time, you're trying to swallow a whole camel. You're worried about the gnat instead of the camel. So the idea was, like he just said in the previous verse, you are so concerned with the small things and you're missing the big picture. So you will take all the pains in the world to not swallow a gnat, but yet you're going to try to swallow this camel of the more important things. And so again, placing ritual over mercy, placing ritual over faith. He said, that's what you guys are doing. And so doing that is like trying to choke down the largest unclean animal. You're trying to force this thing, and it's not going to work. So that's what he's telling them. So they're trying to avoid the smaller unclean animal and not the big unclean animal. So you're worried about the little stuff, but you're not worried about the big stuff. That's what you need to be focused on. Okay? All right. So let's look. That was woe number 5. Let's look at woes number 6 and 7. These are in verses 25 through 28. So let's look at that again. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you make clean the outside of the cup and of the platter, but within they're full of extortion and excess. Thou blind Pharisee, cleanse first that which is within the cup and platter, that the outside of them may be clean also. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for ye are like unto whited sepulchres, which indeed appear beautiful outward, but are full, or within full of dead men's bones and of all uncleanness. Even so, ye also outwardly appear righteous unto men, but within you're full of hypocrisy and iniquity. So we've got a couple of woes here, number 6 and 7. So the basic idea is, you religious leaders, on the outside, how do you appear to all these other people?
Accepted and unglamorized.
Yeah, and do they appear righteous?
Yeah.
And holy? Yeah, that's what they look like. They give the appearance of being faithful servants of God, but are they really? No, they are not. So he said your outward appearance is one thing, but what's on the inside, which is much more important, that's ugly. Okay, that's corrupted, what's on the inside. The outside may look all nice and shiny and spiritual, but it's not. Their hearts are evil. Their hearts are corrupt. And remember, we talked about when Jesus said, in the Old Testament, there were unclean animals, and of course they're still under that at this point. That's why the gnats and the camels and pigs, they weren't allowed to eat stuff. And so there were restrictions on what they could eat because things were unclean. What about in the New Covenant? Do we have restrictions on what we can eat? No. Right? We can eat pork. They couldn't, but we can. And we talked about why they didn't know how to cook it. It was dangerous, and so God's looking out for them. But remember what Jesus said when they were fussing at him and his disciples for eating. And Jesus said, it's not what goes in that corrupts you. What is it? What comes out. Because that comes out of your heart. Okay? And so your goodness and your righteousness, if you have it, that's where it is. By the same token, if you're evil and wicked, that's where it is. It's on the inside, but the goodness or the wickedness, that's going to come out. Okay? And so that's what he's trying to make that point about them. And so, again, he uses kind of this figurative language, but it's something, everybody, we can still understand this today. Verse 25, you make clean the outside of the cup and the platter, but within, they're full of extortion and excess. So, if we had literal plates, if I had a plate and I had a cup and a saucer, and I'm going to drink something out of this cup. I'm going to drink a Coke or a tea or whatever, a coffee. Some of y'all like coffee, I don't, but whatever. You're going to drink something out of that. And so, if I tell Julie, hey, Julie, you want some coffee? Yeah, that'd be great. So I'm going to wipe off the outside of the cup, but the inside of the cup, well, I've been drinking out of it for a month. I've never washed it. And it's just kind of gross and nasty. And then I pour that coffee in and offer it to Julie. Yeah, I'm pretty sure Julie is going to say, you know what, I've changed. I don't really think I want any coffee. She's not going to want to drink out of that cup. Yeah, but I'm like, but the outside of it looks so pretty. I just washed it just for you. Yeah, wash the inside. Because that's what's really important. If the outside of the cup was a little bit dirty, Julie could probably live with that as long as I clean the inside where the coffee was, right? So that's what he said, you guys clean the outside, but the inside is nasty. And that's what really matters. Just like if you, again, if I clean the bottom of a plate, but the top of the plate, it's got old food on it, and then I dump new food on it and give it to you, I'm pretty sure you're going to be going, I don't want to eat that. Yeah, I'm not, thanks, but I'm not hungry, right? That's gross. You got to clean the surface of the plate where we're going to put the food, right? And so that's what they were doing. So he says, you're clean on the outside, but you're very wicked on the inside. So you look good, but you're not really good, okay? And so he's telling them to clean the inside, because if you clean the inside, what's going to happen to the outside? It makes the outside clean, right? So if your heart is righteous, and that doesn't mean perfect, it doesn't mean we never make a mistake, but if you're trying to live for God and be righteous, that's going to come to the outside. Your inside will be clean, that's going to make your outside clean. But these fake people, they clean the outside, but deep down inside, they're just wicked, right? So they try to look good in front of their fellow man, because you can fool other people, but you can't fool God, right? And so in the end, that's not going to get you to heaven. If you don't clean the inside, you're not going to get to heaven. And so Jesus, again, he's trying to make the audience understand, yeah, these guys look holy and righteous on the outside, but they're not. This is what they're like on the inside. This is where their heart is. This is what their thoughts are. Their thoughts are wicked. So you don't need to follow them. Okay? And so that's what he's talking about. But he says if you cleanse your heart, it will purify the outside. Because if our hearts are good, what do we mean by the outside? Obviously, we're not talking about just like what we look like. What do we mean by the outside?
The way you interact with people.
Yeah, your conduct, right? So if my heart is leaning toward righteousness, my outward conduct will be more righteous. If I'm wicked, my outward conduct is probably going to be wicked. Jesus said that's where all evil originates, in the heart. And that leads, it becomes thoughts, and then thoughts turn into actions. Okay, so if I have wicked thoughts, I'm going to act on those wicked thoughts. By the same token, if I have good thoughts, I'm going to hopefully pursue good actions. And that's the outside, right? So he said, you look good on the outside, but you still, for people that are really paying attention, you betray with the actions of what you're doing. Again, they don't practice what they preach. So we talked about that last week, right? You tell everybody to do certain things, but you're not willing to do it yourself. Okay? But so you're able to fool some people, but you're not really clean. Now, then he also makes this reference in verse 27, which again, we might not understand, but they would have understood perfectly. And it really is pretty simple. He said, for ye are like unto whited sepulchres, which indeed appear beautiful outward, but are within full of dead men's bones and of all uncleanness. So the first thing is, we got to know what a sepulcher is. Does anybody know? Some people might know what that is. What's a sepulcher?
Vase type.
It's a what?
Is it a vase?
Well, probably could be a vase. The clue here is, are within full of dead men's bones. A sepulcher is a tomb. But it's something that holds something. So you could probably call a vase that as well. But he's talking about a tomb that somebody's buried in. Okay? And so he says, you're like the whited sepulchres. So they're beautiful on the outside. But what's on the inside of that thing? A rotting corpse. That's what's inside. The outside you may have painted it white. It may look sparkling clean. It may look beautiful, but it's rotten on the inside. Somebody's rotting in there. That's what it is. Okay? And so what they would do, and the reason this would resonate with the Jews, is because they would paint the sepulchres white So they were used to seeing white sepulchres. That's typically what they would do, because again, it was, you did not want to come into contact with the dead. That was considered to be something that was unclean. And so they would paint it bright white to where it would stand out even at night if you were walking through, and you would know not to make contact with that. If somebody was buried in the ground and it wasn't like a marble tomb or something, they would usually put chalk, white chalk on the ground, so you would know not to step on that. That's somebody's grave, and you don't want to come into contact with that. And you said, well, you're not in contact with the body. Yeah, you weren't even supposed to touch the tomb or anything, right? And so they would put white chalk, or they would paint the sepulcher white, and it would look really good. But Jesus said, but we all know what's on the inside. What's on the inside ain't so pretty. Okay, and so the Pharisees are like that. They paint themselves up on the outside, but on the inside, they're just rotten to the core. And so he's making that illustration. And once again, the audience would have understood exactly what he was talking about. Okay, and so the other point with this is, like I said, the Jews believed that if you came into contact with a dead body, which was unclean, what would that do to you? Yeah, it makes you dirt. You will be unclean. So, you see where I'm going with this. So, the Pharisees are like the sepulchres. So, if you all come into contact with the Pharisees, what does that mean? They're unclean, you're going to be unclean. They will corrupt you. They will pollute you. Just like if you came into contact with a dead body. That's the point he's making. I mean, this is a scathing rebuke. They would have fully understood exactly what he was talking about. He's like, he's comparing them to rotting corpses. He said, they're just as filthy. And if you follow them, you will be poisoned. You will be just as rotten as they are. And if you're just as rotten as they are, do you think that's really going to get you into heaven? No, it won't. Okay? You know where they're going. They're going to the lake of fire, and that's where you'll go if you continue to follow them. So those are the things he's pointing out there. And so, again, that's pretty easy for them to understand, and I think for us to understand as well. All right, so let's look at woe number 8. This is the last one. Verses 29 through 36 again. So he says, woe unto you again, because you build the tombs of the prophets, garnish the sepulchres of the righteous. And listen to what you guys say. If we had been in the days of our fathers, we would not have been partakers with them in the blood of the prophets. Wherefore ye be witnesses unto yourselves that ye are the children of them which killed the prophets. Fill ye up then the measure of your fathers. That one's really important. Ye serpents, ye generations of vipers, how can ye escape the damnation of hell? Wherefore, behold, I'm going to send you prophets and wise men, scribes. You're going to kill them. You're going to crucify them. You're going to scourge them in the synagogues. You're going to persecute them from city to city. These are my messengers I'm going to send. This is how you're going to treat them. That upon you may come all the righteous blood shed upon the earth, from the blood of the righteous Abel unto the blood of Zacharias, the son of Barachias, whom you slew between the temple and the altar. Verily I say to you, all these things shall come upon this generation. Now that's key too. It's going to come on this generation. Okay, so the people he's talking to there. So let's go back to the start there in verse 29. He says, you guys build and you decorate tombs of the prophets, God's prophets that he sent to you. And you make a big deal about making these wonderful tombs for them. But what did you not do? So you make a big fuss over them when they're dead. What about when they were alive? Yeah, you didn't listen to their teachings. Okay? You want to make a big show of honoring them now, Why didn't you obey their teachings? Because they were prophets of God. You acknowledged they were prophets of God, and so what they told you to do, where'd that come from? Came from God, right? God's telling you, but you ignored all that, but now you make a big deal out of it. You try to pretend like, oh, we respect the prophets. If you had truly respected them, what would you have done? You would have listened to them and followed their teachings, but you didn't do that. So again, it's easy to say with the tongue, like again, putting that to us today, it's easy for me to say, oh, I love Christ, but do I really live for him? That's different. Right? Anybody can say they love Jesus, but do they really? So it's acting, well, now we love the prophet. Well, you didn't love them when they were alive. If you'd have loved them, you would have followed what they said, but you didn't do that. So you want to make a big show of it now, but that's not going to help you. That doesn't matter. Okay? And so then they tell Jesus, he's saying, and you guys say, if we'd been there with our fathers, we would not have partaken in the blood of the prophets. In other words, well, our fathers, they killed a lot of the prophets, they persecuted them. These people now, what are they saying? Well, if I'd been there, what? Would they have persecuted them or not? Verse 30. Jesus said, you say, if we had been in the days of our fathers, we would not have been partakers with them in the blood of the prophets. So what are they saying? Yeah, I wouldn't have killed the prophets. My ancestors did, but I wouldn't have done it. And Jesus is basically calling baloney on that one. He's like, oh, yes, you would have. You're lying. You can say that now because they've already been killed. Well, I wouldn't have done that. Jesus said, you know good and well you would have done it. Okay, you're lying about this. He says, be witnesses in verse 31. You're the children of them that killed the prophets. You would have done the same thing. You would have supported your fathers in this effort, even though you want to tell me that you wouldn't have. But remember, he can see what's in their hearts. He knows. It's like, yeah, you want to say that, but you would have done it. You would have done it just like they did it. And what are they doing right now? I mean, at this point. Right? What are they getting ready to do? I mean, they're already thinking about it. What are they going to do? What are they going to do to Jesus? They're going to kill him. Right? So Jesus, okay, so you're saying you would not have killed the prophets, and yet right now as I speak, you boys are scheming about how to kill me, the Son of God. But you wouldn't have killed the prophets? Give me a break. Right? So he's calling them out on that. I know exactly what you're thinking right now. While I'm talking to you, you're thinking about how can we kill this guy? He says, oh, you most certainly would have killed the prophets, and you're going to kill me. You're going to have the Romans do it, but you're going to do that. So he's really calling them out on that. Okay? And then verse 32, this is what we need to understand, because a lot of people read it and they go, what's he talking about here? So after he said, you would have done it, I know you're thinking about doing it to me right now. Then verse 32, fill ye up then the measure of your fathers. Okay? Can we figure out what that means? What's he saying there? So you would have killed the prophets. I know you want to kill me. Fill ye up then the measure of your fathers. Go ahead and live up to the legacy of your fathers. Go ahead and do what? Carry out your plan. Go ahead and have me crucified. Because that's what I came here for, to die for everybody's sins. So he's telling them, you boys just need to go ahead with your plan. You know you're going to do it. Just go ahead and let's get on with it, is what he's telling them there. Okay? All right, we're out of time, so we need to stop right there. I was hoping we'd get through that section. But Lord willing, we'll try to pick it up there. So he's going to go on from here and tell them, okay, because of all this, he's projecting future events. Here's what's going to happen. Because of all these things I've called you out for, here's what's going to happen because of that. So we'll finish that section, Lord willing. Does anybody have any questions or comments? All right, we'll take a break for a few minutes and have our worship service.